Okay, we're
Okay.
broadcasting now.
All right. So, we are supposed to not just answer these questions, but have a discussion about what we've learned and incorporate these questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Will everybody understand? So, I guess maybe it would be good to start out just going around and getting maybe an insight, something that stood out to you most from what you did or watched for the two lessons this week. So we can just go down I'll just go down the way that I see everybody on my screen. So let's see who's next to me on my screen. Valerie,
Yes.
do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm going back to my journal because okay, on Elder Christofferson's talk about why marriage is between a man and a woman. I thought it was really great. He had a lot of points, and even further with what I was reading this morning for today's lesson. You know, I was thinking, what's going to happen with the same-sex couples who have children? How there's going to be missing links with families in the eternities, because how are families going to be put together with these couples who are same-sex couples raising children together, because that's not part of Heavenly Father's plan.
That is an interesting thought.
And with my kids, they've had my son. He ended up doing his GED. He didn't spend much time in high school, like 3 years, and then he stopped going and did his GED. But my two girls, they have faced friends telling them you're racist, and because you don't believe in same-sex marriage, and they've been faced with a lot of that. And my youngest, she's a senior now, she just tells people how she feels, and she don't care what they think of her, and is not bothered, but she just tells it as she sees it,
Mm-hmm.
how families are supposed to be. And so I just really see how Satan is working to destroy families, and he's trying to destroy Heavenly Father's plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was definitely a big part of what we were reading about this week too. So it
Mm-hmm.
made it even more. There was a lot of it to go through, see how prevalent that's becoming. Um,
Yes.
Tiara, do you want to?
Um, so I'm assuming that we're supposed to talk about the threats on the family part 2, but I don't know. But
Just anything, I think, from there's questions on here from the whole week.
Yeah.
So I think just whatever stood out to you, whatever.
Yeah. Cool. There is like some articles and then a video that talked about like after birth abortion, and I had never really heard about that as being a thing. And so I just thought it was like really interesting. There was like this debate going on between like a Planned Parenthood representative and then like a legislative congressman guy, and they were talking about how the Planned Parenthood lady was saying that that the decision of what to do with the baby is like between the doctor and the patient, and then the congressman guy is like, well, isn't the patient now the baby that's alive, that's like right there? So I don't know, I just thought it was really interesting, like the different perspectives that people have now about abortion and how they think of it in how they can see it in a moral way. It's just really interesting to see how twisted I don't know, how society thinks about abortion. Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. I was reading a thing, I think it was for, I can't remember which class it was for, and I just had, like, started looking at something and then reading other stuff at how many people, like, it wasn't like a huge percentage, but it was just still shocking. It felt like you should still be able to abort your baby up to 2 years old.
Yeah,
What?
that's ridiculous.
That's infanticide is what that is. That's
Yeah.
killing your baby. So just so we're all on the same page. Yeah, but I was like, that's so crazy. Like how somebody could literally think that that was okay. That's a human. I don't know. There's no debate at that point whether or not it is a living, breathing person. Right? So,
I know. Yeah. It's just shocking.
Yeah. All right. So I don't know I think Katie Dillman is next on my screen. Are you wearing red?
Yeah.
Katie? Oh, yay! Okay. Got the right one. Thanks.
Okay, so I think something that stood out the most to me this week was watching the video of the porn star. So we're kind of fairly open about this, but my husband has a porn addiction. And so I've seen how that affects the person who has the addiction. I've seen how that affects me as the spouse. But I've never ever considered how that affected the people in that production. So it was just really interesting to see like how even as someone in that industry, like you still can like learn to objectify women so easily because that's just your job. You don't have any secure intimacy anymore, and there's no attachment. So it's just a physical thing you view women as like objects. I'm sure that can go for women viewing men as objects in that situation too. But it really threw me off because I didn't expect that kind of a reaction from somebody in that industry. I just really kind of thought they were like, oh, whatever. I didn't think about how much pornography could really affect those who are in that industry. So just kind of a big eye opener for me.
Yeah. Fight the New Drug has some really cool videos. If you can sit through them and listen to the people's stories, they're very compelling.
Yeah.
They're just hard to listen to, especially if you know have a personal experience with someone that has struggled with it. It sort of makes it even harder to hear their experiences. But yeah,
the videos were
awesome. Thanks, Katie.
I was listening to those out loud. So my husband was like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "It's for class. Sorry, you can go to the other room." Because I mean, he's been clean for so long now, and it's still something that just affects both of us, and we still have to take careful precautions. So I kind of almost wonder if, as a porn star, if like he has an addiction in that way, kind of as well. It was something that kind of sparked my interest. Was like, we know how the brain perceives pornography as like a drug, but what about those people who are in the industry? Does it affect them as much as it affects the people who are watching it or looking at it? It's kind of cool to think about.
I would think so, but yeah, it would be interesting. Over time, it'll be interesting to see how, now that they've really started to pay attention to those people, kind of what the impact is. I saw on the I can't remember if it was Fight the New Drug, but that there's I think the fourth like young porn star committed suicide, like somebody that's a big name in porn, in like just the past like 6 months. Like,
wow.
So it's clearly having a brutal impact on the people that are involved in it too. So
yeah,
I don't think there's any safe way. I don't think you're safe no matter which way you're in it. So thanks, Katie. All right, Katie Browning. Right.
I kind of was again what stood out to me too was kind of the video of the porn star, and I kind of thought about how I was thinking about, again, kind of that other side too, and I guess I've never thought about that, but how do we teach, like, you know, they objectify themselves almost. I guess they almost have to be numb to it, it seems like. But, most of them eventually are probably going to have children or families. And how do you teach your family to, respect women and respect people's bodies? And it's just an interesting kind of double standard, I feel like, in the world, because it's a big push. I thought about, the kind of like in Hollywood, we don't want to view ourselves as perfect, and we want to make sure, we respect our bodies. But on the other end, the world is focused on this pornography. And I kind of thought about how do we, how do you can't reconcile those two things, and you can't teach your children one without teaching teaching them the other, that this really does objectify someone. And yet the world is kind of, pornography has nothing to do with the big push, you see in Facebook and in media about Hollywood, and how, don't objectify women and children, and don't, women's bodies are not perfect, or they're not the same. And I kind of thought of that in that instance of how there's just such a gap between, in the world, of we're ignoring this huge problem. And or at least I feel like society is just kind of like, you hear a lot of people like, everyone does it, it's just natural, or men do it. And especially outside of like a religious or LDS culture, it's just kind of something that people do. And so I kind of thought of it that way. It just was interesting to me that this disconnect between, they don't see that we are, we're so focused, which is good, on like magazines and Hollywood, but yet this whole other side of that is even a bigger problem for men, women, and children, and families in general. So yeah, I kind of just thought of that, pondered on that a little bit. So that really stood out to me.
Yeah, it is interesting, especially right now. I've been thinking about that a lot with the whole Me Too movement, and how you reconcile some of the stuff that Hollywood puts out with this push for having more respect. It is, like you said, it's a very double standard. Like, how do which I think it'll be an interesting couple of years as we move forward, and as Hollywood moves forward from all of that too. So
yeah,
thanks,
sure.
Katie. Jamie, okay.
Hi, yeah. Sorry, the baby's been crying, so I'm keeping it muted as much as I can. Something that stood out to me was just right at the beginning of our reading, how it said, yeah, the family's under attack. We all know that, but that we were about to get our eyes opened for how bad it is, how much we're actually facing, and how far we've already come. And that stuck with me throughout all the reading, as I was reading the chapter in the book, and as I was watching videos. I started feeling like, I don't know if I want to know this, because it's kind of overwhelming. Especially, we have 10 kids. My oldest is 18. She's a freshman at BYU. And then our youngest is 5 months, and she was born 2 weeks before we took our daughter out to Provo. And so I look at my kids and I think, okay, you guys are pretty fortified. We're working on that, and we're being really careful and intentional about the things that we do in our home, and that we're teaching truth and making sure that we're appropriately not exposing them, but appropriately informing them of, here's what you're up against, and here's how we defend it, how we advocate for truth without being argumentative or causing contention. But this week I started thinking about the things that they will face as they get older and are looking for someone to get married to and to start a family with, and what kind of options they will have, and then what kind of options their children are going to have. in the first chapter of our book, it talks about how, actually, no, it wasn't the chapter of the book. It was something that I read on one of the articles. They were talking about just no-fault divorce. Oh, no, maybe that was the book. Anyway, they were talking about no-fault divorce and how suddenly the institution of marriage you could come in and out of without really having to meet the requirements and without really having to, one person can just terminate it. And I thought, how would that be if I was thinking of the comparison of entering a university. So say you've worked hard and you've all through high school, you've gotten straight A's, you've met every requirement, and you are now accepted to enter into Harvard. And there are requirements, and for continuing to be there, Harvard can't just say, you know what, today we just don't like you anymore, so you're out. Because you have met the requirements and you are continuing to put effort into your education there. And I feel like some of that is what they've done with marriage, that there are no longer requirements or standards that you have to meet in order to enter into that institution. And then anyone at any time can say, I don't really like what's going on here, so you're out. Or I'm out. And it takes away all of the strength and all of the power and efficacy. It makes it really, it gives that institution no power and no kind of, you would look at a Harvard graduate and think, well, they don't really have any standards anymore, so it doesn't really matter if you go to Harvard or not. When a potential employer is looking at your resume, they think it's the same as pretty much everything else, because now there are no more standards and now there are no more requirements, and anyone can get in and anyone can get, and Harvard can kick you out. It's all depending on how they feel. And I've just been sort of playing through that analogy in my mind with marriage and how to explain to other people why marriage is between a man and a woman and why that needs to remain true. If other people want rights and they want to have privileges, then they have to meet requirements. And it's not that I don't believe that other people deserve freedom to choose or that they don't deserve to have the ability to achieve what they want to in their life, but there are still requirements that have to be met. And I think this whole movement away from marriage and including the ability to have an abortion, you are taking away all of the requirements and saying whatever I feel like is what I get. So I get to have whatever I want without doing any of the work for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is an interesting analogy. It's as everybody in this, are you guys all sort of at the end of your degree? Like you've taken the other classes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it is interesting to look back on the other classes that we've taken where we've learned about, no fault divorce and some of the other stuff, and then bring this class in at the end and kind of see how those things all play together. I know for me, one of the things that really for me that stood out was how how Satan has manipulated the system. So, going back to the no fault divorce starting in California and, eventually taking over the country. And I'm divorced and remarried. No, of no fault of my own. But I mean, like there was cause. I can't imagine that, people just walk away, but after you've been divorced and you talk to other people, you kind of see how often that happens, that people just decide that they're out. And since they don't have to cite a reason for getting divorced, they can just leave. But I thought about that there was that video of people on the street. And a couple of the people that were for gay marriage brought up the divorce rate amongst heterosexuals. And so they were saying, they say that marriage is for the family, but their divorce rates are so high. And I thought about Satan's plan, how by starting with, destroying the intact families, it made it so that we were where we are today with we're having to defend heterosexuality. One of the people in the video used the term heteronormativity. And I thought, what is that word even? Who made that word up? Who decided that heteronormativity is a word that now we have to defend, thinking that heterosexuality is the norm? And I was at the movie with my daughters. We went to see Greatest Showman. And one of the previews was for a movie from the guy that did A Fault in Our Stars. But it is about this kid coming out. And in the preview, they're making light of heterosexuality being the norm, that would have straight kids had to come out to their parents. And so they're trying to put it on this equal playing field. So as I was studying it, I was kind of thinking of the other way around, about how Satan has just really had a brilliant plan for destroying God's plan by taking marriages and making it so that divorce was just so easy, so that it took away the importance, like Jamie said, of the standards of what it means to be part of a marriage, and then attacking it from the sexuality side and making marriage about sex, which that's not really, I mean, it plays into marriage, but it's not what marriage is about. But, solely, but making it about sex. So then everything becomes about who you are sexually attracted to, and then, snowballing it from there. So now we have to defend being heterosexual. I was talking to one of the moms in my ward, and her daughters, I'm doing my practicum this semester too, and we were talking about some of the things that they face, and they these young women said that the pressure in their high school to have sexual relations with the same gender is significantly stronger than the peer pressure to have sex with your boyfriend. That there's a lot more peer pressure to experiment with the same gender, just to make sure what you're signing up for. So that's kind of what I thought about as I read through all of this, was how truly, like, good is called evil and evil is called good at this point. And I thought that Ryan Anderson did a good job in his book of laying out that same thing, with how throughout all of history, marriage has been this sacred union between a man and a woman, and every culture has respected that. So those are kind of the things that I thought about as I was going through it. So as I look through these questions, because we probably have about another half hour or so, is there anything that anybody wants to bring up? Or there was a couple of the questions that I kind of highlighted that I thought were kind of interesting, like the Bruno Mars song example. I hate that song, by the way. I'm so happy that it was brought up in here. But is there anything on that, like the questions that anybody looked at and thought, oh, yeah, that really...
I really liked question, sorry, I have to go back and look. Number 3 of it talks about how well do you think that the average Latter-day Saint understands the doctrine or the why of the family? I think sometimes a lot of Latter-day Saints, I think if they understood the more of the why, and I can't remember if it was this class, I'm taking another class. I feel like I'm getting information in my head mixed, but it was, I'm like, I don't know which class it was I was reading, but it was Elder Christofferson, I believe, or Elder Bednar. I can't remember. I was reading both of them a couple days ago. So, and he talked about, that we really, it's the why that a lot of Latter-day Saints don't understand. And if they did understand it more, they would be more the family and why their decisions and their choices would change drastically. And I think I really thought of that, of why, like, I think a lot of us know the basics of like what we were taught in primary, but do we really know the doctrine of why? And I really liked that question. That really made me think, like, do I know why? I wanted to make sure, like, do we know why? Are we teaching our children really the why of it instead of just this is how it is? And so I don't know, that one really stuck out to me.
I thought the same thing, actually. As a matter of fact, in my notes, I wrote down that I needed to have a family home evening about that, about the talk that talked about the theology of
Yes.
the family, the doctrine of our church is the theology of the family.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is a really powerful message. And I need to make sure, as you know, I have a blended family. And so sometimes it's easy, all LDS families, I think sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the paperwork. Like, okay, so, who's sealed and where and what, and, but I think that the Lord has this bigger plan, and that it is about our families and having the ordinances that we need to have of being sealed, but also why, like, why is that important? For my religion class this week, I actually found a really cool talk by President Nelson last Sunday when I was just looking at some of his old talks, and he was talking about, had this cool thing about an Egyptian manuscript or something, but was talking about how when God created Adam and kind of being tormented by putting the breath of life in him, because then he would have to suffer pains on earth, and then he would have to send Christ down, and that he was going to have to watch all of his children go through this. And I thought that is such a capstone on why the family, like, seeing kind of that image of God struggling with that he was going to have to see his children hurt. And I don't know, like, it really just kind of brought it all together. But yeah, so same thing.
Yeah, I
so
love that.
I have a family home evening ahead of me on exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and I love Sister Beck's talk on the theology of the family, because I always consider, like, the creation, you can kind of link it to the family, and like, but I guess I've never linked like the fall or the atonement. Like, I have, but not to where the class, like, really specifically, especially the information we're learning about, and so it was really great to just ponder on that and think, like, okay, like, it just makes, like, it's such a bigger, like you said, a bigger picture. And so I like it.
Yeah. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to add on that one?
I just thought it was interesting that, like, they're saying, like, if you understand the why of the family, then you'll be much more protective of your family, So, like, we tolerate so much coming into our homes now because of it's just the social norm. But if we understood the family, then we would put up much bigger barricades. I just thought that was cool to think about.
Yeah.
Question in the reading kind of like that. It says, well, not in the reading, in the question, so we could discuss. It says, where is it? How can we keep from being so immersed in the culture of our day that we don't recognize certain beliefs and trends as threats to the well-being of children and families? And that's one that we've been focusing a lot on in our marriage, especially lately. With my husband's addiction, we're trying to limit our time on social media. We've like gotten rid of most everything. We try to only watch like a certain amount of TV. We try to make sure that we research the content of the TV shows or movies that we're watching prior to watching it, so there's no surprises of like super foul language or sexual scenes or anything. I feel like that's just something that we've all, not everybody, I guess, but quite a few people have stopped. Even in the LDS culture, they're just kind of following the cultural norm and saying, well, it's fine, it's okay, it's socially acceptable, so it's okay. But while we're trying to defend the family, we have to fight for the family. So we have to put up those barriers, and we have to restrict some of the things that other people might be able to do. but we have to realize that it might be damaging the family overall, and we have to be more careful about the things that we invite into our home, especially.
Mm-hmm. It's, man, until you have teenagers, I don't think you realize like how bad things are, maybe, or like you let things slide when it's just you. But then I have daughters, so I have 6 daughters.
Oh wow.
They go from 18 to 4. So our oldest is a senior. She just turned 18. And then there's a 7-year gap between the baby and the next oldest one. But we, like I'll watch a movie that I remember watching, even just from 10 years ago, but I didn't watch it with my kids. I'll be like, oh yeah, let's watch that movie. And then I plug it in and I'm like, fast forward, fast forward. So yeah, I think it is easy to just get lazy about it or think, oh, it's okay. They're going to see it anyways, or, whatever. So,
Especially how you're surrounded with friends or family who aren't members as well.
mm-hmm.
My family's not members of the church, so when we were home for we were family for Christmas, and my dad and my mom don't have boundaries like that. So when they started saying some of the movies that they wanted to watch with us, we're like, probably not. Because I mean, we've gotten in the habit of seeing what content is in the movie before we start watching it. And sometimes it's hard to say, no, we can't watch that with you right now. And for them to totally understand, like, one, like why, and two, how that like affects the family overall. And my little family at home, my mom, my dad, my sisters, none of us are very close anymore either. So I feel like by allowing so many different things into the family home, it's not necessarily torn apart the family, but it hasn't brought us closer either. We haven't had anything to to help us like be guided through life. We just were able to do whatever we wanted, and it wasn't. I mean, it was fun when we kid and everything, but then when you get older and you're trying to build your own family, it's really hard to figure out what boundaries should and shouldn't be allowed in a family home, especially when you're starting to raise your own children and you're like, oh, this could really affect them. Like I used to love horror movies, and now I'm like, oh, I can't bring that into the house. It just doesn't feel right with having a baby. It just doesn't feel like that spirit needs to be in this house. So it's just, there's so many different things that I don't think we even realize we have to be more careful about, especially with the Teen family being so much stronger and more real now than ever.
Yeah. It's scary, even just, like I said, like just going to a movie when you know the movie is going to be good and appropriate, but you have to worry about the previews now, like in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are they going to see just in the preview?
Yeah.
Even of a preview of a PG movie, what's going to come up on the screen, and what questions are they going to have? And we have a very open dialogue in our house, pretty much everything. And there's a fine balance between, okay, so this is a good story and we're going to allow this, but then where do you stop? Where do you actually like put the rod down? Say, no, we're not going to cross over here. Because it slowly just creeps in.
I think it's interesting too, because like, when we're recognizing, certain beliefs and trends as a threat, I think I'm not married yet and I don't have children. And so I think sometimes it's easy to justify your reasons, like, well, it's not rated R, so, but it's justification for, at least for me, it's easy to kind of justify your decisions instead of just try to focus on what would the Savior have me do. It's easy to make those little justifications. And I noticed, I'm 31 now, but it's in my mid-20s, I realized like you have to buckle down even as a single person, because those habits are going to carry over in your own, even if with your children eventually, and so you have to really just keep your mind and your spirit and body clean and do the best you can. But at least in my life, I think it's easy to justify, like, well, like that had a good meaning, so I can so I can watch it, or I don't know.
Right.
I kind of.
My husband and I always laugh because he is a lot more aware of sexual content in a movie that I will let slide. Like, oh, they're living together, but the movie's so cute, And I'm a lot more aware of the violence in the movies that he'll let slide. He's like, this is a perfectly good movie. There's no sex or cuss anywhere in it. And I'm like, right. But like 5,000 people just got stabbed. I mean, where are we? What are the lines? So I guess it's good when you have some balance there to say, hey, wait, because like you said, like I can justify anything, and so it's good to have him to balance me out or whatever. So there's definitely a lot more pressure on you as a single person to be like, okay, I gotta just monitor myself. I don't have anybody double checking me. I don't know, as a single mom, it was real easy to just put my kids to bed and spend my time watching a lot of all the rom-coms that I would never watch with my children.
Yeah.
And now I plug some of those in and I'm like, ugh. I should never have watched that. Yeah. Satan is sneaky. He is definitely sneaky. It has a good way of just, because I'll also notice that we'll become really aware of it and we'll start, the filters get ramped up and we're very careful, and then they slowly slide back down and we have to build them all back up. Like the walls just sort of start crumbling. Does anybody have any other of the questions that stood out that you wanted to?
I do.
Yeah.
It's the one, it's 14. How many of the driving threats to children and families rooted in selfishness? It's all about me. And that one, we see it all the time where it's same-sex couples, it's kids, me. We live in our society is very much me instead of us. That's why that one stood out to me.
And one person becoming offended or shouting their views can create so many. I was just not that it's funny, but it was interesting with the H&M ad. Did any of you see that in the news?
Mm-mm.
So their H&M had an ad and they had all these little boys wearing hoodies. And one of the little boys was black. He was from Ghana. And his hoodie said, "Coolest monkey in the jungle." Well, so somebody decided that was offensive. Somebody unrelated to the boy or unrelated to they just saw the ad and decided that having this little black boy in a hoodie that called him a monkey was totally offensive. Well, the mom of the little boy came out and said, "What are you doing? Why are you making this? Like, why are you even saying this? Like, you're making my boy feel like, he did something wrong." And H&M had to pull the ad, and throughout South Africa, like their stores have been being trashed and looted over it because this one person decided that they were offended over something that was not even, I mean, come on. But the me, it's all about me and how something makes me feel and how I can be offended and how, that it's a crazy, it's turned a little bit crazy, the me thing for sure. So how do you think we teach our children? Because I've been trying to answer this question for myself. How do we teach our children not to be in that category, to immunize themselves maybe against that easily offended, high vanity thing that's happening in our society?
I think service, like teaching them to serve and engaging them in service regularly and consistently within our homes, and helping them recognize how good they feel when they serve. And that, like, that has been, I think, one of our biggest for overcoming selfishness, because if they start becoming focused on their own needs and what they want and how they can get it, then it turns to this, like you said, that self-gratifying mindset that it's so prevalent. Self-gratification overrules culture right now. And so if we can help them to find ways and really look for ways to help other people around them, defense against that. And like I said, helping them to recognize and to think, what could you do today? Every day when they leave the house, we talk to them on the way out the door. So we have 2 high schoolers, a middle schooler, and then 3 that are in elementary. And we talk to them about, okay, look, pray for someone that you can help today. Ask for Heavenly Father to help open your eyes so that you can see needs of people around you, so that you can meet those needs. And I was like, it's my job to meet your needs, mine and Dad's. Let us focus on, you don't have to worry about if you're going to eat, or if you're going to come home to a warm home, or if you're going to have the clothes that you need. If you need something, we'll meet your needs. And then as your needs are met, you can go and help meet the needs of others around you. And I feel like that is, when we are lax on that, I see more selfishness and more fighting in our home. But when we're really focused on it and looking outside of ourselves, you can feel family. And I watch them. Like yesterday, my 12-year-old son, I had to run him to the store because he needed something for a school project. And I said, okay, I can take you right now. And then I asked my 17-year-old, son, and I was like, can you please finish cooking dinner? I've got to run him really quick, and then we'll be back, and just do everything that you need to and ask the little kids to help you. And he was like, okay. 12-year-old son to the store, and he came back out with what he needed, because I was like, they pay for things. They earn their money, they have their bank accounts, and they pay for things and that aren't their needs. And he came back out with this little chocolate for me.
Aww.
And I was like, you bought me chocolate? He goes, yeah, it was no big deal. It was on sale because, Christmas candy is cheap right now. And I was like, but you thought of me. I took you to the store to buy something for a school project that you really wanted. It wasn't something he had to have for the project. It's just something extra that he wanted. And he's like, yeah, Mom, you took me to the store and you didn't have to. And I just was thinking about something I could do to say thank you. And I was like, yes, but those moments don't always happen, but when they do, I feel like this is definitely going in my journal because it was so thoughtful of him.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That is exactly true. My daughters, they always say about this time, and they just were talking about it yesterday, after Christmas, because during Christmas time, you're so engaged in service, right? And we do the last straw at our house, so they're serving each other. And just yesterday, they were like, "Mom, we need to do the last straw like in January. We need to keep it going because there's a lot more contention around the house, and we're not doing it." And I'm like, "Well, it doesn't have to be like a project. You can just serve each other. You can just do nothing. But if you need to, then that's fine. We'll put hearts in a jar. We'll see if we can fill the jar with hearts." But I definitely agree. Service is an answer to a lot of the things that are on this worksheet of questions. Getting outside of ourselves and serving our family or serving those around us would solve a lot of societal ills. I think we're at about an hour almost, so we just have a few minutes left. So we need to do our recap. And Katie, are you doing the notes,
Yes.
right? So you can do
Yeah.
the recap.
Yeah.
So part of the recap, we might want to decide real quick who's going to do which job next week so that you can kind of put that into the last few minute recap. So if anybody needs to go back and look, it's in there. So who wants to set the meeting up next week? And send out the email.
I would, but I'm not sure I know how to do it correctly. I've tried before and it never seems to work. So
I can set it up next week. That's
Okay.
fine. I mean, I did it for my Math 221 class, so I'm pretty sure I know how to do it. I'll get on early. So, and then we're meeting at 9:45 next week, right? Okay. Thank
Add,
you guys for adjusting that time a little bit for me.
yeah, go ahead and add that to the email for the Terry who missed class
Okay.
today.
Okay.
So that way she knows, 15 minutes early.
Thank you. Yeah. And then who wants to do notes and then be the discussion leader next week?
I can do the notes next week.
I could be the discussion leader.
Perfect. You got that, Katie?
I do. Okay. So for our recap on the truth about marriage, we talked about a lot about how the home and family is under attack and how it will get worse as time goes on. We talked about fortifying our children, and we also talked about pornography and how this affects individuals and families. We discussed marriage and that there are no longer requirements to enter or stay into a marriage, that it's more kind of just solely on how you feeling. We also discussed how we started, we started slow, didn't just give us all of these problems at once. And we started with divorce and kind of destroying the families in a sense. And then he moved on to more of homosexuality and same-sex marriage and things like that. We discussed the why of the family, and we also talked about Sister Beck's talks, the theology of the family, the creation, the fall, and the atonement. We talked about when we know the why of the family, you become more protective of your family, more diligent, and more kind of thoughtful in what you bring into your home and protecting your home and your children from threats. We discussed recognizing certain beliefs and trends as a threat and not becoming just compliant with them. And what we allow in the home, again, we discussed that, of how that can help. We also discussed the threats to children and families, how these threats are always rooted, sometimes how many are rooted in selfishness or it's all about me. We talked about how overcoming these is a lot through service, through thinking of others, and so the arrows aren't always pointed at yourself. You can think of others. And then finally, we'll meet next Thursday at 9:45. And let's see. And I'm so sorry. How do you pronounce? Is it Jeannie? Okay, I wanted to make sure. And then Jeannie will be she'll set the meeting up, and then the notes will be done by Katie, and the discussion will be led by Valerie. And that's about it.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you guys for the discussion. It's nice to get to know all of you. It's always good to get the first meeting out of the way. So it seems like it just gets more comfortable for everybody. We get through the semester and we get to know a little bit about each other. So thank you guys. Hope that you have a good week.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this week, Valerie, you posted the video on the discussion board, right?
Yes.
And then that's all that that happens. You post the thing and we don't have to do anything, right?
That's what I understand.
Okay, perfect.
And that she'll go through the video.
Yeah, I guess she'll let us know if we missed a component of it. So,
Shoot, yeah.
Thank you.
See you guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.